So I'm going to introduce an alternative technique to architectural rendering you may already be familiar with, called post-digital rendering. This style acknowledges the digital medium but moves beyond it. It's characterized by a blending of digital and analog techniques, where these digital tools are employed in conjunction with traditional methods such as drawing, painting, and collage. So it's essentially an aesthetic decision that isn't aiming for any sense of photorealism, but more so is attempting to communicate concepts and its representational choices. I tend to identify these types of drawings as being heavy on collaging textures, but they also don't necessarily need to be that way. So I'm just going to flip through some examples of other people's work. If you guys haven't already, try to start making a library of drawings you think are good, because this can be helpful when you're tasked to make a certain kind of drawing. So you can look back and identify what makes each of them good examples. So I'm going to go through some of my own drawings now and talk about the layers that make it what it is. So here I used a color palette from another drawing I thought was nice. Okay. So yeah, I like this drawing colors right here, so I use this as a reference for these. And then I also used these people as the scale figures, but I essentially just traced them in vector. And here I can pull out some of these, for example. So they're grouped right now, but I can ungroup, and you can see like each is just like a traced layer essentially. And I got the colors from this drawing up here by just like selecting like this guy's jacket, for example, and using the eyedropper tool, which is right here, and like just clicking a color. Could be anything like that one. So yeah, that's how you change that. So yeah, this is a pretty simple file. It's essentially just some Rhino screenshots, and yeah, I also used a texture to give the atmosphere a bit of haziness here. I think it's on filter, yeah. So as you can see, this is just let's see what it is. Actually, I'm not sure 100%. Okay, so it's like some sort of rust, I guess. But yeah, I turned it down to 15% and overlaid it on top, and it's got some nice like texture to it, like a piece of paper almost. That's kind of what I was going for there. But then I also have, let's see, the screenshot is just a Rhino screenshot here, overlaid on top. So yeah, it's pretty simple. The shadows were just mostly just skewed and turned the opacity down. And then the plants and trees are just a vector file that I've seemed to have lost, so I unfortunately can't share that with everybody. But another trick I can show though is this screen right here is actually I think I actually have the original one in images here. Yeah, so how I got this screen to be like this in like behind the column was by using the transform shear, and make sure your preview's on, and you can like skew it to a certain degree that you want it to be, because this particular wall is slanted, so I had to make this slanted. But once you have that, let's just pretend that there's like a column in the middle of these two things. So you can add a couple layers, or just one layer actually, and put it behind your image. So then just make two boxes, and pretend there's like a column in between here. We can do something like this. So yeah, then all we have to do is make these two boxes, select them both, go to Object, Compound Path at the bottom, Make, and then you can do, you select this, the two boxes, and select this image and hit Make Clipping Mask. You can also go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make. Alright, sorry, I meant to say that the two boxes where your clipping mask is going to happen is actually on top of the image, not the other way around, sorry. So yeah, you just select both of these things, hit make clipping mask, and then you've got the same image, but a column can go in between. You don't always have to use it in this type of way, but it can be useful. I'll give some other examples in other drawings. So a good example of using clipping masks here is using it to create these nice section cut textures. I like these a little bit better than the standard solid black section cut, personally. So to get this, you're just going to use the pen tool on the left here, pen tool, and trace where the cuts are in your section, where you have your extracted line work from Rhino, presumably. And then go to Google and find a texture that you like. In this case, I used white concrete. And then select all of the section cuts that you've drawn and make them a compound path like I just showed you. And then you can use the clipping mask tool to get all of these textures into the section cuts. So I used a similar technique getting the exterior walls to be board form concrete. Essentially I just traced out all of the walls on the outside, but made each trace individual where they needed to, because some of them are like skewed, for example, like this wall up here, or this ceiling I should say, and also some of them had to kind of rotate, like this one right here is rotated because the volume is also rotated. So I should also mention there's some additional color layered on top of the texture here. I think it's on concrete. Where is it? There it is, this layer. So yeah, I just overlaid some color here at 20%. This particular color was like a kind of averaged color of the brick from the neighborhood. So it was referencing the context essentially. So these are the community center project diagrams for my junior spring semester. The strategy here is to turn off all the layers except for the systems I'm showing, while keeping the original massing as a reference image in the top left here. So just to unpack some of these layers for you guys, I'll just select some of these and drag it out. If you didn't know already, you can use Alt and drag to copy and paste something easily in Illustrator. It also works in Rhino, I believe. So yeah, as for the background, we just have the top layer is a shadow. I'll show you guys how to extract this from Rhino in a moment. But yeah, this is just turned down to 30%. And then next we have just a normal Rhino render. This is turned down to 20%. I'm just gonna show you. Yeah, it's just a typical Rhino rendered. This might even be Arctic mode. I'm not sure what settings I had at the time, but and then behind that is just a texture to kind of give it some nice visual stuff going on. It's, I don't know, you can tell it's a little bit textured in the background. I always like a little bit of texture in my drawings. But yeah, this is turned down to 50%. I think it's just some sort of like plaster texture or something I found on Google. So yeah, you can just shop for textures on the internet if you need to. So yeah, and then as for the actual massing here, we have just a I actually realized this earlier. I don't know why there's two different layers like this, but you only need one. You need and also you need outline to get this exact layout here, obviously, but 0.75 stroke and just a solid white fill is all to get this to look like this, and make sure all the layers are nice and tidy and in front of the background, obviously. And then as for this is just a typical make 2D from Rhino. Yeah, all the structure, all the piles and columns and whatnot. So that's what that is. And I also used a bit of just highlighting with some low opacity to show like this is the structure. Yeah, so. All right, so now I'm just gonna show you guys how to extract some of those general sort of layers to each of those drawings. So first of all, I'd recommend having a really nice Rhino model by the time final review comes along. It can be really helpful. It can help make your drawing look really nice and rigorous. So if it's got a lot of detail, just model everything if you can. Yeah, so just to kind of give an example here, let's just start off with like extracting a sort of sectional perspective. We'll go with that. So yeah, just type clipping plane, get clipping plane. Obviously, I'm sure most of you know how to do this by now. And then get a section cut you like. This seems pretty good. I like this one. Seems like it tells a lot about the building with these multiple exterior tunnels. So a technique I would recommend here is selecting your clipping plane, making a new layer, just any new layer, and click on the color. And then you can go to the colors here, and on this slider you can turn the opacity all the way down. And then once you do that, select the clipping plane and put it on that layer. And what that does is it gets rid of these like ugly black section cuts that are typically on there. I don't like them there personally, but let's just make sure I don't have any curves. Yeah, okay. So after that, you can just go to rendered mode. And actually, I think I should probably show some of my settings beforehand. I'm just gonna skim over them just to make sure everyone's on like the same page here. So this is what I have my settings turned to. So I just went to File, or sorry, I right clicked on this thing in the top left here, hit display options all the way at the bottom. And then I went to rendered and clicked shadows, and make sure your shadows are on. If your computer can't handle some of these settings, maybe try using the school computers. But yeah, just turn your settings to look like this. And then also these are what my other settings look like. I'm not really sure what Rhino has on by default, but I've adjusted these over the years to my liking. So yeah. So now you can go to rendered mode, and we get this nice looking render here. So make sure you find a perspective you like, and of course go to set view and named view and save that perspective so you can go back to it. It's called perspective 1. So yeah, and next you're gonna extract to this screenshot. So what you can do is, sorry, I just wanted to make sure setting was turned on. I just wanted to note that I had shadow only turned off, but we need it to be turned on in this case because otherwise the screenshot transparency doesn't work for some reason. So we'll go back to view capture to file in order to take a screenshot as usual. Don't forget to turn off your clipping plane visually. You can just hit the light bulb to turn that off. So yeah, view capture to file. And we have this nice clean screenshot here. So if you want your the quality of the screenshot to be better, you go to scale down here and you can click the up arrow and it turns it up by a point whatever at a time. So yeah, I have mine at 5 and it looks pretty decent, but if you really want like a high quality screenshot, it'll increase the scale quite a bit there. So yeah, make sure it's set to transparent background as well, so we don't see any other stuff going on. Of course, you can always Photoshop edit stuff out, but it's just easier this way to have these settings on. So yeah, I'm just gonna extract this screenshot and I'll get back to you in a second. So yeah, set this to PNG also, so not JPEG, because JPEG typically I don't think handles transparency very well. So I'm just gonna name this screenshot 023. Let's go with that. So yeah, now we've extracted this nice looking Rhino screenshot. It gets a little pixelated when you zoom in a lot, but it's unlikely your reviewer's gonna be looking that closely anyway. So of course, as I mentioned, you can increase the quality. It's not a huge deal, but anyways, let's go back to Rhino and type sun, and you're gonna turn skylight. You're gonna go to the light bulb and click skylight off. So then you're gonna get this really harsh black sort of fill here. So then you can also go back here and do view capture to file again. And you're going to select transparent background as usual, normal scale, hit OK, and remember to save this as shadow or something. So now that that's saved, next we can extract the line work. I'm sure you guys have done this a million times, but I still have to do it. Oh, I just screwed up the perspective. That's why this is useful. Go back to perspective 1 and make 2D. Hit OK. So now we have the make 2D file. I'm just going to go to top view real quick. I have it at set view in this tab up here, so I can easily just change my perspectives around if I need to. So yeah, you guys have done this. Select the line work, go to export selected, change it to an Illustrator file, and not my thesis folder media. Okay, screenshot 03, line work, hit OK. And now we can open up Photoshop and drop in, first of all, I like to, I guess, edit all the files really, except for the line work. So drop these in. I like to change the crop to be perfectly within the boundary of where it needs to be. So it automatically snaps to the edge of your, sometimes it automatically snaps to the edge of your outline here, but in some cases it doesn't, so you kind of have to get in there and snap it perfectly. But yeah, anyway, that one worked. All right, so now we have this, and Control S to save on top of itself. And then we can bring in the shadow. And this is what I like to do is select all the black and hit right click it, or sorry, select with the magic wand tool right here. And if it's not there for you, then right click, and then it'll be in this selection here. So yeah, select the black, right click, similar, and then select inverse. There's probably an easier way to do this. I'm pretty sure I saw John actually do something in class that seemed a little bit faster than this method, but I just go through and erase all the stuff that isn't the black. And then Control D is deselect, and then I crop to the edges of each of these things again. And then once I have this cropped and saved, then I can open up an Illustrator file and I'll just create a new one. So then I can drop in this original screenshot of the Rhino model, make it a bit smaller. So we have this. We'll call this layer SC for screenshot, and then we'll do another one for shadow and another one for line work. And then, so we want the screenshot always on the bottom and the line work always on the top, so the shadow can be in the middle. For the shadow layer, put the shadow on and crop it to be, not crop, but scale it to be the right size here. Since we got the proportions correct, in all likelihood, oh, it doesn't seem that we did, or maybe we did, I don't know. Well, we'll figure it out. So you just align it to an edge and scale it down, and it should snap into place. And then bring it down to be right on top of it. So it might not be perfect the way I just did it, but it works. So now that we have this shadow layer, we can automatically just select it and turn the opacity down to whatever we want. So now we have this perfectly adjustable shadow. And you can also just get rid of the shadow in the Rhino screenshot to begin with, but I like to have this other layer to be able to mess with my options here. So yeah, and then of course the line work, let's bring that in, copy, paste. And I like to group my line work so it doesn't, you don't accidentally drag some of it out of the way. So yeah, just snap it to the edge, roughly. And then that's the highest point there. You can hold shift and drag to make it so it doesn't like go all over the place. That helps you. I like to turn my stroke down to 0.25 typically. So that didn't turn out perfectly, but you know, it's good enough for this tutorial. So one other thing I want to show you guys is another fun trick to automatically get the total outline of the Rhino model that you're extracting. So what I like to do is I just do a normal view capture in shaded mode, transparent background, okay, I'll call that outline, and then bring it to Photoshop. And again, there might be an easier way to do this, but this is just how I work. Then what you can do is Control L and bring the slider from the white all the way to the black and hit OK. And then we can crop it so that it's all in the right crop here, all the way to the edges, and then hit OK. Save that. Bring in an Illustrator. We'll call it Outline. And yeah, just drag it in. And now this, it might not be a perfect sort of edge to it all, but it does the job pretty nicely sometimes. We'll see how this turns out. This one, since it's more of a complex figure, it might not be perfect, but we'll see how it works. So yeah, bring this on top of everything, go to Image Trace, and then Silhouettes. And now you have a perfect silhouette of it, and when you hit Expand, now it's just going to turn it into a fill, and then you can hit the reverse swap button here, and then now you have a perfect outline of it all. So yeah, you can increase or decrease the stroke of it and give it a nice outline. That's a little bit too intense, but and also some of these are not really needed. All these like little triangles in here, because of all, yeah, you can get rid of these pretty easily. So another thing you can do once you have all this, as I mentioned, is let's say that I want this board here to be a certain texture, so I can just go in and draw an outline of this board, and I can overlay a texture on top. I'm just going to do a really rough, give you a rough idea of what I'm talking about here because, for the sake of time. Yeah, we'll just, you know what, screw it, I'll just do this. And now we have this traced out. Just pretend I did that perfectly. We'll go to add another layer. So we want this, the layer I just drew, on top of this other layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through my texture library. I would recommend saving some a texture library somewhere. So I have all these textures. So let's say, I don't know, let's go with stained paper, or no, let's just go with something that makes more sense for a building. Maybe this one, sort of like a concrete rough texture. So then make that small, obviously, and then yeah, just bring it on top of the layer you just, or the layer you just drew. Yeah, so you're gonna want the outline on the top and the texture below it. So then make clipping mask, and now you have this texture on top of your layer. You can turn the opacity down, give it a low opacity, and it looks pretty nice, I feel like. You can kind of still read the different gradients of white to black behind it, so where there's like ambient lighting in some areas with objects that are adjacent, it keeps that to some extent, and you can also read the texture. So that's just a usual rendering tool that I use, that I've done in other drawings, like this one, for example. This one's a little bit lighter, but you can always adjust the opacity of the original render. I think that might actually make it look a bit nicer in this case. Maybe go with like 30% or something like that. So yeah, you can also read the outline a bit better when it looks like this. I think this sort of process is pretty good for making diagrams. So and it makes them look really clean. You can add colors or textures on top of things, like I just gave an example of. Let's just click this. I'm holding Shift Alt and hitting the up arrow key, so I just made a copy of it, and then I can just bring it back down. Release mask. That. Let's Control 2 lock that just so I can do that quickly. But yeah, maybe I'll make it red, for example, put it at like 10%, or maybe even like, sorry. Maybe I'll put this up a bit higher so that we can read it a little better. So we can hide that. So yeah, it looks pretty cool, sort of. You can always just mess with a bunch of different textures and different colors on top of other layers. It's a nice, very custom way of working, I feel. I feel like I have a bit more control if I don't understand like Lumion or V-Ray software very well. So, but yeah, that's just an alternative way of working, and that's it.